The campus health director adjusted his glasses, his gaze sharp. He repeated the story back with thinly veiled disbelief. Caleb had been walking, then suddenly stumbled, tripped down a full flight of 23 stairs, shoved past nearly a dozen students, and somehow landed with perfect precision on top of Ethan, tearing his collar open in the process. His mouth had then coincidentally collided with the back of Ethan's neck, and his teeth just happened to sink into the gland, accidentally injecting a full dose of pheromones. He asked if that was an accurate summary of events. Ethan, with an arm still around a trembling Caleb, let out a sigh of mock resignation. He confirmed the nurse's absurd story. It was an accident, he claimed, so now he had no choice but to take responsibility. A wave of weakness washed over Caleb, forcing him to lean heavily against Ethan. He wished his glare was sharp enough to slice the man into pieces. Ethan, completely unbothered, simply grinned and slid a document in front of him. It was the standard temporary partnership agreement. He then feigned a sudden realization, exclaiming that he'd almost forgotten Caleb was too weak to even hold a pen. He called himself thoughtless. Ethan placed the pen in Caleb's limp hand, his own large hand enveloping Caleb's completely, guiding it towards the signature line. Caleb clenched his jaw, resisting with all his might, but it was useless. A taunting voice purred in his ear, asking why he wasn't moving, playfully wondering if he'd forgotten his own name. Ethan chuckled, a low, triumphant sound. He remembered it for him. Caleb Reed. With a flourish, Ethan signed Caleb's name on the document. The contract was now in effect. It was a federal law, enacted to protect omegas from being marked and abandoned. If a marking occurred between a single alpha and omega without criminal intent, a temporary partnership was mandated. The 3-month term matched the maximum duration a temporary mark could last. During this period, the alpha was legally responsible for the omega. At the end of the term, the contract would dissolve automatically unless both parties chose to make it permanent. The law that was supposed to protect him had just sealed his fate. Ethan carefully folded the contract and tucked it into his pocket before rising to his feet so abruptly that Caleb, caught off guard, instinctively wrapped his arms around his neck. The moment he realized what he'd done, a hot flush of shame and anger made him want to disappear. The smirk on Ethan's face was insufferable. He gestured vaguely toward the door, noting the director was still present and suggesting they take their newfound intimacy elsewhere. The health director looked at them with a mixture of pity and professional detachment. He explained that, in theory, an accident like this could be ignored. They could live their separate lives and the 3 months would pass quickly. He paused, then added that with a phenomenal compatibility rating of 98%. He trailed off, but his eyes said the rest. Good luck. Caleb's own body was already a testament to the power of that near-perfect match. He was 20 years old and had never felt so utterly boneless, so completely undone. Terrifyingly, this was only the result of a partial, temporary mark. He couldn't begin to imagine what a full, complete marking would reduce him to. The Blacktown car his family had sent was waiting at the university's main gate, but Caleb could barely move a single step. Ethan cornered him in the stairwell, his body a solid wall. He glanced dismissively toward the gate and scoffed, questioning how Caleb expected to go on an arranged date in his current condition. Just before Ethan had seemingly materialized out of thin air and tackled him, Caleb had been politely declining a friend's dinner invitation. He had a prior engagement, a meeting with Logan Vance, an A-grade alpha. The match was ideal on paper, and both families were pushing for it. It was less a romance and more a corporate merger. Ethan raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise that Caleb was actually going through with it. His hand moved to the back of Caleb's neck, his thumb pressing lightly against the new mark. A jolt of pure electricity shot down Caleb's spine, making his knees buckle. Ethan's voice was a low murmur, dripping with insinuation as he asked if Caleb really planned to meet another alpha while wearing his mark. He was a predator toying with his prey. Caleb knew then, with absolute certainty, that this was no accident. This was revenge. Retaliation for the public humiliation Caleb had caused him a month prior. The Ashford family had hosted a lavish gala, ostensibly to celebrate their son's birthday, but in reality, it was a carefully orchestrated event to announce his pairing. The spotlight had been fixed on Ethan all night. He was the chosen one. But when it was time to cut the cake, the young Ashford heir had turned not to Ethan, but to the crowd, his eyes finding Caleb. He had announced that he wanted Caleb to join him. The ballroom had fallen into a stunned silence. Caleb had tried to demur gracefully, reminding the young man that he was an Omega. But the heir was insistent, his voice pleading. He just wanted Caleb with him. It was clear to everyone that the boy was unhappy with the match his family had arranged. He didn't like Ethan. It was an open secret in their circles. Ethan had a reputation for being a careless, arrogant playboy who coasted on his family's wealth and power. But Caleb knew the deeper reason. The Ashford heir was in love with his own bodyguard, an alpha he could never publicly be with. The young man's eyes begged for help. Ethan, leaning against a far wall, looked utterly indifferent, watching the drama unfold as if he weren't a central character in it. A member of Caleb's own family discreetly signaled for him to stay out of it, but he couldn't. He had stepped forward, smiling brightly. He declared it would be an honor to stand beside his best friend as he cut his cake. They had only met twice, but social niceties were a currency he traded influently. He had thought Ethan genuinely didn't care. Today proved how catastrophically wrong he'd been. The man was petty, vindictive. Ethan, still pinning him to the wall in the stairwell, pulled out his phone and made a call. He instructed his driver to come to the campus health center and to have someone inform the Reed family that their son, Caleb, would be a guest at his home that evening. He ended the call and looked down at Caleb, a triumphant smile playing on his lips. Caleb protested, insisting he wasn't going anywhere with him. But Ethan just shrugged, claiming it was too late. He praised his staff's efficiency, suggesting they had likely already contacted his family. Words, once spoken, couldn't be taken back. The rage bubbling inside Caleb was so intense he felt he could commit murder. Ethan seemed to read his mind, telling him to put away the murderous thoughts, reminding him that killing was illegal. Trying to control the tremor in his voice, Caleb gritted out that he was not going. He would go home on his own. Ethan laughed, a low, throaty sound. He pointed out that Caleb could barely stand, let alone go home. Then he dropped the bomb. He asked if Caleb realized he was going into heat. The high compatibility match had triggered it. His body, Ethan purred, needed him. The words were a profound insult, a violation. Caleb denied it, glaring with all the fury he could muster. Ethan simply tutored him not to glare. He said that in Caleb's current state, a small release of his own pheromones would be enough to make him pass out. He saw the disbelief in Caleb's eyes and clicked his tongue, as if disappointed. It seemed Caleb didn't believe him. When Caleb woke up, he was staring at the unfamiliar ceiling of a minimalist, painfully stylish bedroom. For 2 full minutes, he lay frozen, processing the fact that he had, in fact, passed out. The architect of his humiliation was lying on his side next to him, propped on an elbow, watching him with a smug, amused expression. Seeing him awake, Ethan sat up and held his hands up in a gesture of surrender, preemptively stating that he hadn't done anything. Yet, If he dared, Caleb would kill him. He refused to give Ethan even a glance, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. The moment his feet touched the floor, his legs gave out and he collapsed onto the thick, plush carpet. The fall didn't hurt, but it ignited a fire deep within him, a scorching heat that spread through his entire body. Ethan remained in his surrender pose, his voice maddeningly calm. He repeated that Caleb wasn't capable of doing anything on his own right now. And he was right. Caleb was too weak to even push himself up. Effortlessly, Ethan scooped him up, placed him back on the bed, and leaned over him, trapping him. Caleb made one last desperate attempt. He asked if Ethan had any inhibitors. Ethan confirmed that he did, but he had no intention of giving them to him. Where was his knife? The thought was fleeting but vivid. Hot breath ghosted over the back of his neck, sending a cascade of shivers down his spine. His mind was at war with his body. One part of him was fighting with every ounce of his will, while the other was melting, arching, craving more. His instincts and his intellect were tearing him apart. Sensing the violent tremor running through Caleb's body, Ethan paused. His palm covered Caleb's hand, which was clenched tightly in the bedsheets. The heat from his touch was startling. His voice was no longer teasing. It was rough, strained. He pleaded with Caleb to understand. 98%. He had been fighting it for this long, and he was at his limit too. Caleb spat back that it was Ethan's own damn fault. He deserved this. Ethan agreed that he had done it on purpose, and he challenged Caleb to hit him if he could. Before Caleb could form another curse, a soft, involuntary moan escaped his lips. He clamped a hand over his mouth, horrified. Was that sound really coming from him? A low chuckle rumbled in Ethan's chest. He hadn't even bitten him yet. He was just licking the sensitive skin. The profanities started again, a torrent of rage from Caleb, even as his body betrayed him. Ethan told him to be patient, murmuring something about pre-dinner rituals. He asked what Caleb's scent was. Lemon? Caleb squeezed his eyes shut, his voice muffled. Bergamot. It was a scent people often mocked as being like a cheap air freshener, unsophisticated. It was the primary reason his overall assessment, despite his S-class physical abilities, was graded down to a B. Ethan hummed in appreciation, calling it fresh. He liked it. He mused aloud about how much he would enjoy having that scent all over him. Normal words sounded obscene coming from his mouth. Ethan's own pheromones were unusual in that they were scentless, like plain water. It was the only reason Caleb's mind was still relatively clear, even as his body burned. Ethan asked if he was relaxed now because he was about to begin. Ethan had to administer 3 shots of inhibitors. Neither of them had anticipated that their initial reactions were merely an appetizer for the full force of a 98% match. There was no holding back, no gentle exploration. It was a storm. Ethan was swearing under his breath as he fought his own instincts, trying to maintain some semblance of control. Caleb, in a haze, was alternately fighting him off and pulling him closer, his hands searching for anything that could be used as a weapon. On the brink of complete chaos, Ethan, shaking, managed to apply an inhibitor patch to Caleb's neck. Caleb, in turn, scrambled through Ethan's discarded clothes, frantically searching for the auto-injectors. They were both a mess, panting and disheveled. As Ethan shakily administered a 4th dose to himself, Caleb's hand slipped into his pants pocket. He remembered seeing Ethan put the contract there. He had to find it to destroy it. He didn't want to be tied to this man for 3 months. He couldn't explain this to his family. His fingers found nothing. Confused, he tried the other pocket. Ethan, slowly depressing the plunger of the injector, didn't stop him. He even offered a helpful, infuriating suggestion that Caleb was searching in the wrong place. Ethan caught his wrist, guiding his hand toward the front of his pants. He asked if Caleb felt it now, and with a wicked grin, inquired if the size was satisfactory. Caleb seriously considered the legal ramifications of crushing it. How many years in prison would he get? Ethan must have sensed his murderous intent because he quickly pulled Caleb's hand away, a flicker of genuine fear in his eyes. He let out a breath, admitting that if Caleb kept touching him, he wouldn't be able to stop, and Caleb wouldn't be able to escape. Caleb cut to the chase, demanding to know where the contract was. Ethan's casual demeanor returned as the fourth inhibitor dose took full effect. He informed Caleb it was in his safe, then added with a challenging smirk that if Caleb could crack it, the entire Shea family fortune was his. He told Caleb to stop glaring at him with those beautiful eyes, admitting that he was, at his core, a beast. Caleb retorted that he was worse than a beast. The drive home was quiet, but Caleb could feel the storm brewing. As expected, the moment he walked through the door, he was summoned to the study. His father was reviewing a file, not even bothering to look up. He demanded to know why Caleb had stood up Logan Vance. The Vance family was displeased. Caleb explained that he hadn't been feeling well. His father's voice was cold as steel. He asked if going to Ethan's house had made him feel better. To be honest, it had. The temporary mark from a high-compatibility alpha was a dizzying, overwhelming pleasure. His father warned him not to entertain foolish ideas. The Shea family was out of his league. Caleb quietly agreed. His acquiescence seemed to soften his father slightly. He finally looked up. He'd heard Caleb's latest evaluation scores had dropped again. He mentioned that Logan's family expected him to produce at least 2 A-grade alpha heirs. The thought had been so horrifying that Caleb had intentionally held back during his physical assessment. The birth rate for alphas was already low. Even B grades were rare. To be a broodmare for 2A grades was a nightmare. His father informed him that the Vance family was willing to overlook this incident. The meeting was rescheduled for next week, and his attendance was mandatory. As Caleb turned to leave, he couldn't stop himself from asking if his father wasn't curious why he had been unwell. His father just waved a dismissive hand, gesturing for him to leave. Caleb nodded calmly and closed the door behind him. Back in his room, the bathtub was already filled with hot water. He began to undress, but then paused. With a sigh of weary resignation, he sank into the water fully clothed. The perfect warmth enveloped him, but it couldn't quell the heat raging inside. He splashed water on his face, but it was no use. He was humiliated. One bite and a few touches, and he was soaked through. He hated being an Omega, hated the biological imperative that made them submit to and crave alphas. Most of all, he hated that the one person he was so powerfully drawn to was a degenerate like Ethan. The universe has a cruel sense of humor. The person you want to avoid most is the one you see everywhere. When Caleb spotted Ethan from across the campus quad, he grabbed his friend's arm and immediately turned to walk the other way. His friend was confused, asking why he was hiding. He pointed out that the contract only bound the alpha. Ethan was responsible for him, but he couldn't force him to do anything. He was right. If Caleb hadn't been so overwhelmed by the heat, he never would have let Ethan mark him a second time. Wait, his friend's words echoed in his head. It only binds the alpha. Caleb's eyes lit up. His friend took 2 cautious steps back, recognizing the look on Caleb's face as the one he got right before he did something terrible. A wicked plan was already bubbling up inside him. He asked his friend for an inhibitor. When his friend asked why, Caleb just smiled. It was time for a little payback. He found Ethan holding court with a group of other alphas, recounting a play from last weekend's football game. Caleb knew Ethan had seen him approaching. His posture didn't change, his conversation didn't stop, but the slight quirk of his eyebrow and the upward tilt of his lips gave him away. His friend had once said you can always tell when two people have slept together. Their eyes connect differently. Their small gestures betray them. And it was true. Even though they had only shared a bed, the air between them had fundamentally changed. Caleb walked straight up to him, ignoring the curious stares and low whistles from the surrounding group. Ethan feigned a casual indifference, leaning against a pillar with a playful smirk. He called Caleb his temporary partner and asked why he'd been avoiding him just moments before. His actions answered for him. The moment Caleb's hands circled Ethan's neck, the crowd erupted in whoops and cheers. Ethan's body went rigid. He hissed, asking if Caleb had lost his mind. Caleb tilted his head back, his expression one of pure innocence. He wasn't on drugs, he whispered. He just wanted him. The cheers grew louder. Ethan's face hardened as he shot a glare at the onlookers, but his smile quickly returned as he looked back down at Caleb, trying to regain control of the situation. He asked if Caleb was addicted, if he couldn't live without him now that he knew how good it could be. Caleb's right hand slid slowly from Ethan's shoulder, down his chest, to his lower abdomen. Ethan's gaze darkened instantly, his eyes burning with a new heat. An alpha, completely unprepared, was an easy target. Caleb smiled sweetly at him, then reached up and ripped the inhibitor patch from his own neck. Ethan's playful facade shattered. He swore, his movements frantic as he tried to cover Caleb's gland, to reapply the patch. But it was too late. In those few seconds, the scent of bergamot, clean, with a hint of sweetness and a bitter edge, filled the air. Ethan pulled Caleb into his arms, shouting at the crowd to get lost. They weren't going anywhere. This was better than any game. They only started to shuffle back reluctantly when Ethan unleashed a wave of dominant pheromones. Caleb stopped him, whispering not to make them leave, or they'd miss the show. Ethan threatened to deal with him later, reaching for his phone to call his driver. Caleb stopped his hand, murmuring that he still had something to say. Ethan's breathing was already ragged, his chest heaving. His eyes were turning red. He insisted they could talk later. Caleb hooked his neck, pulling him down closer. He wanted to talk now. Ethan's body temperature was alarmingly high. The other alphas, unable to withstand the pressure of his pheromones, had retreated further. Caleb felt a small surge of relief that he'd taken so many inhibitors beforehand. Ethan might have suspected something was wrong, but he still bent down obediently, allowing Caleb to rest his chin on his shoulder. Caleb blew a soft breath against his neck and watched with satisfaction as the skin instantly flushed crimson. That was probably his limit. In a near-silent whisper, right next to his ear, Caleb enunciated each word clearly. "To hell with your partnership." Ethan's pupils contracted. In the next second, Caleb bit down hard on his gland. He made his escape quickly. By the time he heard the aftermath of his actions, his dinner with Logan Vance was already drawing to a close. Logan was typing rapidly on his phone, a small smile on his face. He mentioned that someone had just told him a ridiculous story about Ethan getting forcibly marked by an Omega. Caleb calmly sliced a piece of his steak, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. He commented on how pathetic that made Ethan sound. Logan agreed, adding that the Omega must be reckless. He imagined Ethan would make them pay dearly once he got his hands on them. Caleb had intended to just play along, but Logan's dismissive tone and the fact that he'd spent the entire dinner glued to his phone irritated him. He decided to change tack. He asked Logan for his opinion on the Omega. It was only the second time Logan had looked up at him all evening, the first being when they introduced themselves. Seeing the genuine curiosity on Caleb's face, Logan put his phone face down on the table. He stated that anyone who would commit such a classless, desperate act couldn't possibly come from a reputable family. The Vance family, he assured Caleb, would never associate with such people. Caleb nodded in agreement. Logan, pleased with his response, continued. He theorized about the Omega's motive, dismissing it as a pathetic attempt to get attention, a deluded fantasy of being the main character in some cheap romance. He couldn't imagine any other reason for such a public, vulgar display other than a bizarre seduction tactic. Caleb wished he could record this and send it to Ethan, asking him if his accident had also been a seduction tactic. The thought of Ethan's face turning green with rage was delightful. Remembering Ethan's ridiculous excuse, Caleb couldn't resist pushing Logan further. He asked if there was any possibility that the Omega had just been walking, tripped, and accidentally landed on him in that specific way. Logan stared at him for a long moment before Caleb burst out laughing, assuring the humorless man he was only joking. The joke fell flat. Logan went back to his phone. Caleb had lost his appetite. Their evening was clearly over. It ended early, so the driver hadn't arrived yet. As they waited outside, Caleb noticed a young man across the street staring at them, frequently looking down at his phone. Logan's phone buzzed incessantly. Once Caleb was in his own car, he told the driver to circle the block. As they passed the restaurant again, he saw the young man leap joyfully into Logan's arms. His father wasn't home when he returned, which was a relief. He wasn't ready to report on the evening's progress. The butler tried to tell him something, but Caleb waved him off. He was exhausted from playing the part of a graceful, well-mannered potential spouse all night. He didn't want to hear anything. The butler persisted, trying to tell him about his guest. Caleb ignored him, hurrying upstairs. He had just pulled his bedroom door open when a large hand shot out and clamped around his wrist. Before his brain could process what was happening, he was yanked inside. Through the closing door, he heard the butler's voice trail off. "Your good friend has been waiting for you all evening." His good friend Ethan slammed him against the door, a dangerous smile on his face. Caleb opened his mouth to shout for the butler, but Ethan's hand clamped over his mouth, stifling the sound. Caleb tried to intimidate him with a glare. This was his house. Surely Ethan wouldn't dare. He dared. With a single, violent motion, he tore Caleb's shirt. The sound of ripping fabric echoed in the silent room as the shredded cloth fell to the floor. Caleb was stunned into silence. He expected to be thrown onto the bed next, treated like that discarded shirt, but instead, Ethan let him go. He stepped back and sat down on Caleb's bed, his smile widening. He told Caleb he could scream now. He encouraged him to call everyone in, to show them how badly he'd been mistreated. It would be the perfect setup to make Ethan take responsibility for him forever. The man was dreaming. 3 months of this was bad enough. A lifetime was a prison sentence. Caleb kept his mouth shut. Ethan's voice was low, laced with anger. He reminded Caleb of his bravery that afternoon. Caleb shot back that Ethan was the real animal. The insult seemed to genuinely anger Ethan. He grabbed Caleb's arm and forced him to look at the back of his neck. The bite mark was deep, angry, and red. He demanded to know what Caleb was if not a dog, snarling that he'd nearly torn his gland out. Caleb remained defiant, stating that they were even now. No one owed anyone anything. Ethan scoffed at the idea of being even. His had been an accident. Caleb laughed, a cold, sharp sound. He retorted that if a normal person could trip on flat ground with that kind of spectacular result, he'd take Ethan's last name. As he pulled away, intending to throw Ethan out, his foot caught on a wrinkle in the rug. He lost his balance, stumbling forward, falling directly into Ethan's lap. His hands landed squarely on Ethan's chest, his fingers instinctively clenching. Ethan's expression was unreadable. He looked like he'd been gone for a while. Caleb awkwardly cleared his throat. He told Ethan that this time it really was an accident. He asked if Ethan believed him. Ethan took a deep breath. "My last name is Shea," he said quietly. "And now so is yours." This time, Caleb admitted he was at fault. He urged Ethan to take off his shirt so he could check for scratches. Ethan hesitated, so Caleb, in a moment of impatience, tried to rip his shirt off just as Ethan had done to his. The fabric was too strong. He tugged until his knuckles were white. Ethan clicked his tongue, looking at Caleb's reddened hands. He sighed, told Caleb to stop, and pulled the shirt off himself in one smooth motion. The muscles of his chest and abdomen were perfectly defined. Caleb stared for a second too long before he caught himself. Ethan had one hand covering a spot over his heart. It was a tattoo, some kind of script. Caleb couldn't quite make it out. It must be his true love's name. His gaze drifted lower. The area around Ethan's nipple was bright red from where Caleb had grabbed him. He offered to get some ice. Ethan looked at him in disbelief, asking if he was serious about putting ice on that particular spot. When Caleb asked what would happen if he did, Ethan avoided his intense gaze, his voice suddenly husky. He pointed out that neither of them was wearing a shirt. Caleb glanced down. True, but they were still wearing pants. Besides, it was strange for Ethan to be bringing this up while covering his true love's name tattooed on his chest. Curiosity got the better of him. He asked Ethan about the person he loved, wondering why he'd never heard about them. Ethan explained they weren't from their social circle. Caleb commented on how well Ethan had protected them from the public eye. He was known for his ability to control the media. The news about the temporary marking and today's public assault hadn't named Caleb as the other party. Ethan looked up, his eyes filled with a strange mockery. He said the person had turned into a dog. The conversation took an unexpected turn. Caleb offered his condolences, then yawned, announcing that it was late and he wouldn't see Ethan out. Ethan didn't move. Instead, he stretched out on Caleb's bed, looking perfectly at home. He reminded Caleb that he was here for a reason. He wanted retribution. He wasn't going to be so easily distracted. Ethan argued that even had to be proportional to the severity of the act. Caleb's bite was 10 times worse than his. It had nearly cost him his status as an alpha. It was a serious offense. After deducting the 2 times Ethan had marked him, Caleb still owed him 8. After a heated negotiation, they settled on 5. Ethan insisted on collecting half the debt tonight. Caleb resigned himself to his fate and lay face down on the bed. But Ethan pulled him up, settling him in his lap, his back against Ethan's solid chest. The contact made Caleb flinch. He thought they should probably put their shirts back on first. Hot breath tickled his skin, and the familiar, intoxicating pleasure began to cloud his thoughts. It occurred to him then that for all of Ethan's playboy reputation, there were never any actual stories, no named partners. Maybe it was all a persona. Maybe he'd never been with an Omega before, which would explain why his scentless pheromones were so incredibly potent. A dense, suffocating presence inside Caleb that he couldn't seem to shake. Ethan seemed annoyed by his wandering thoughts. His teeth grazed Caleb's gland, a teasing, torturous pressure. Caleb couldn't stand it. He pushed his own neck back into Ethan's mouth, demanding he just get it over with. Ethan happily obliged. As the wave of pure ecstasy crested, a critical thought broke through the haze. He stammered for Ethan to wait, to stop. There were no inhibitors in his room. It seemed Ethan was too far gone to stop. He cursed Caleb for not saying so earlier, his words muffled as his lips traveled down Caleb's shoulder in a series of searing kisses. Caleb insisted there was still time. He couldn't control his own body, which was pressing back against Ethan of its own accord. His hands trembled as he tried to text the butler, asking him to bring inhibitors. There was no reply. Caleb glanced at the time. 10 p.m. The butler would be in his room, religiously practicing his waltz for the upcoming staff party, where he hoped to impress one of the maids from the main estate with his graceless, robotic moves. This annex of the Reed estate was usually occupied only by Caleb and the butler. It was a cold, quiet place. His brothers, all alphas of varying grades, enjoyed bustling households. His father rarely visited, and when he did, he only cared about the progress of the alliance with the Vance family. But right now, his absence was a blessing. The thought had barely formed when his father's voice came from outside the door, summoning him to the study. Both Caleb and Ethan froze. Going to the study was impossible. Caleb struggled to keep his breathing even. He called out that it wasn't a good time, asking if it could wait. His father's voice was sharp. He had 10 minutes. 10 minutes wasn't even enough time for the butler to finish one song. Ethan nuzzled against him, whispering that maybe he should just tell his father the truth. Caleb shot him a death glare, him that if he made a sound, he'd bite his gland off for real. Ethan surrendered with a grin, calling him feisty. His father's voice cut through the door again. "Who are you talking to?" Caleb clamped his hand over Ethan's mouth as he heard the doorknob turn. He called out in a strained voice that he was in heat. The turning stopped. The footsteps outside retreated slightly. His father asked if he had lost control in front of Logan. Caleb assured him he hadn't, that their dinner had gone well. He then asked if his father could get him some inhibitors. There was no answer. After a long moment, the butler knocked on the door. He informed Caleb that his father had left and asked if he needed anything. Caleb stared at the doorknob for a long time before answering, his voice raspy. He told the butler to go rest. A warm, wet sensation spread across his palm. He looked down. Ethan was licking his hand, his eyes filled with a knowing look. He gently removed Caleb's hand from his mouth. For so many years, Caleb should have been used to it, used to the fact that his father didn't truly care about him. He looked at the closed door one last time, then pursed his lips and stripped off the last of his clothing. He turned to Ethan. His meaning was clear. He could continue. Ethan stood up, his voice serious. "I'm not a tool for you to rebel against your father." The interruption had broken the spell, allowing his rampaging pheromones to recede. He asked which room the inhibitors were in. When Caleb didn't answer, he waved a hand in front of his face, a teasing smirk returning. He commented on Caleb's busy evening, going from a dinner with Logan straight to bed with him. He sarcastically called him an S-class time management master. The sour note in his voice made Caleb laugh. Ethan scowled, telling him he wouldn't be laughing once he was tied to Logan. His tone became serious again. He told Caleb that Logan kept an Omega on the side, someone he spoiled rotten. He called Logan a coward, desperately in love but too afraid to defy his family. He warned Caleb to think carefully. Caleb knew he was right. Logan had been replying to the boys' messages all night. The one time he'd put his phone down to speak, the table had buzzed with incessant notifications. But that wasn't why Caleb was laughing. He told Ethan what Logan had said about the Omega who marked him, that they would be played to death if caught. It was insane. Logan had said those exact words. But if I become someone's exclusive Omega, Caleb continued, it's a different story. If I die in bed, it could easily be blamed on pheromone intolerance. The room fell silent. Ethan stared at him, his gaze intense. Caleb felt a strange unease. Ethan told him he wanted to kiss him. Caleb looked like a drenched stray dog, he said, snarling and pathetic and somehow incredibly cute. He leaned in, his hands cupping Caleb's face. He had changed his mind. He wanted to continue. The sudden shift was jarring. Caleb instinctively raised a hand to push him away, his palm landing directly on Ethan's tattoo. He blurted out an apology to the white moonlight who had apparently turned into a dog. It was then that he saw the letters clearly. It was his own name spelled out in elegant script. He shoved Ethan back, leaning in to examine it closely. Your true love has the same name as me? Ethan rubbed his cheek where Caleb had shoved him, a humorless smile on his face. You better hope you still have the energy to push me away later. A soft, warm pressure landed on his lips, and in that instant, his rational mind short-circuited. The consequence of letting a 98% compatibility run unchecked was a flood. Ethan discovered that no matter where he positioned Caleb, the surface was too slick. He finally lifted him up, pressing him against the wall. He panted in his ear, asking if Caleb would take responsibility for him now. Caleb's consciousness was hazy, but his instinct for self-preservation was strong. He refused to let Ethan think he'd won. He patted Ethan's shoulder condescendingly, purring that he was a repeat customer. Ethan froze for a second, then his grip on Caleb's waist tightened, his voice a low growl of frustration. He asked if Caleb understood the situation he was in. One push deeper and they would be knotted. It was a threat, and Caleb returned it in kind. He dared Ethan to try it. He would make himself a widow by morning. Ethan laughed, a harsh, angry sound. He called Caleb ruthless, questioning why he could be so vicious toward him but couldn't stand up to his own father. It was a fair question. Caleb sighed. It was hard to explain. When you wear a mask of obedience for so long, it becomes part of your face. From childhood, he'd been praised for being good, for being compliant. The moment someone asked, "Why have you changed?" a switch flipped in his brain. The look of disappointment in his father's eyes was the thing he feared most in the world. Or at least it used to be. He shook his head, clearing the thought, and wrapped his arms tighter around the hot body in front of him. He told Ethan to stop talking so much. Was this all he had? The taunt worked. Tonight, he was letting his soul run wild, a final, definitive rebellion against his father and the life that had been laid out for him. When he woke up, Ethan was cleaning up the wreckage of their night. The air was thick with their combined scents, bergamot and something like fresh mountain spring water, a combination that softened the cheapness of one and grounded the other. It was a gentle, elegant fragrance. Ethan commented that Caleb's butler seemed old, and he'd been afraid of giving the man a heart attack. Caleb mumbled that he was being surprisingly thoughtful. He rolled over and discreetly started searching through Ethan's clothes. Sometime during the night, when he'd been delirious, Ethan had coaxed him into signing something, but he couldn't find any documents. That was strange. Had Ethan already taken it back to his safe? Looking for this? Ethan held up a piece of paper. It was the original temporary partnership agreement. Below the first set of signatures were two more empty lines. for converting the contract to a permanent one. Caleb let out a sigh of relief. He'd thought it was some kind of asset transfer. He lay back down, feeling lazy. He pointed out that Ethan must not know that without a third-party witness, the signatures were invalid. Ethan admitted he knew. He just liked looking at it. Caleb didn't understand him. If he really wanted to be with him, why not go through official family channels instead of these underhanded tricks? Ethan carefully folded the paper and shrugged. It was because Caleb's father had once declared that he and Caleb would never be together. That was a surprise. Caleb rolled over again, the pieces clicking into place. His compatibility with Logan was barely adequate. But with Ethan, it was a near-perfect, fated match. Fated pair. An omega in such a bond would unconditionally submit to their alpha, both physically and mentally, which meant his father would lose all control over him. In his father's eyes, if Caleb was not eternally loyal and obedient to the family, he was useless. What a pathetic reason. Caleb picked up his phone and started typing furiously. Ethan snuggled up next to him, resting his head in Caleb's lap. He wondered aloud why the butler hadn't come to catch them yet after all the noise they'd made. Caleb explained that the butler was nearly deaf. He wouldn't hear a marching band in the hallway. As Ethan's hands started to wander again, Caleb pushed him off and got dressed. He told Ethan to stay in bed. The butler would be up in a couple of hours. Given his worldview, he would probably just assume they were two good friends keeping warm. Ethan sat up, asking where he was going. Caleb balled up his ruined shirt and tossed it in the trash. His voice was light and cheerful. He had a lunch date with Logan. He left the room without a backward glance, leaving Ethan to stare after him, his face a thundercloud. Logan's response to Caleb's polite greeting was a scowl and a lecture. He warned Caleb that for meetings like this, private contact was inappropriate. This would be the last time. Caleb just nodded. Logan had paid for their last dinner. It was Caleb's turn to reciprocate and to formally end things. Logan glanced at the menu, ordered 2 items at random, and immediately went back to his phone. Caleb tried to start a conversation several times, but Logan only gave him vague, distracted responses. Eventually, Caleb gave up and ate his meal in silence. Logan didn't even notice. It was only when Caleb called the waiter over to pay the bill that Logan finally looked up, his expression one of annoyance. He condescendingly informed Caleb that it was proper etiquette to match one's dining partner's pace. Hadn't his family taught him that? Caleb just nodded again. He leaned across the table, snatched the phone out of Logan's hand, held down the voice message button, and spoke clearly into it. "Come and get your cowardly alpha." Then, as Logan watched in stunned disbelief, Caleb dropped the phone into a glass of red wine and poured the entire contents over Logan's head. He looked him dead in the eye. "You're right. A classless person like you is someone Caleb Reed would never associate with." The news traveled fast. Minutes after leaving the restaurant, Caleb received an furious call from his father, ordering him to roll his ass home. He found the command amusing. He wasn't a tire. On his way, he passed a hotel and, on a whim, took a picture and sent it to Ethan, asking if he wanted to get a room. Ethan's reply was swift. "Hold on, babe. I'm in your dad's study right now." Caleb rolled home at top speed. The old butler saw him and greeted him calmly. "Young master, you've returned. Your father and your good friend are waiting for you." Caleb's heart pounded. Had Ethan been beaten? The butler tilted his head. He hadn't heard anything. Somewhat relieved, Caleb pushed open the study door to see Ethan with blood trickling down his forehead. A shattered paperweight lay on the floor at his feet. Ethan just grinned at him, remarking that Caleb had hit him harder the night before. As his father looked around for another weapon, Caleb rushed to pull Ethan behind him. When Ethan didn't move, Caleb's hands immediately went to his coat, searching. Ethan stopped him, his voice low. If he kept touching him there, he was going to have a problem. He pulled the contract from an inner pocket. Caleb nearly screamed in frustration when he saw it. He demanded to know why Ethan hadn't signed his own name. Ethan explained that Caleb had passed out right after signing, and he had to take care of him first. Caleb snatched a pen from the desk, grabbed Ethan's hand, and forced him to sign his name. Temporary became permanent. He held the contract up for his father to see. "Thank you for being our third-party witness today." As his father's face turned purple with rage, Caleb tried to drag Ethan out of the room. He wouldn't budge. Frustrated, Caleb hissed, asking if he enjoyed getting beaten. Ethan just smiled and patted his hand, telling him to go outside. He had a few things to say and he would be right out. When Ethan was serious, he had an authority that was hard to deny. Caleb calmed down and left them alone. He and the butler crouched outside the door. Caleb was a nervous wreck. He started making small talk, asking the butler if he really was hard of hearing. The butler didn't answer. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Don't worry, young master. My generation was wilder than yours." He smiled, stood up, and walked slowly down the hall. Just as he disappeared from view, the study door opened. It took all night for Caleb to get the full story out of him. It was the usual talk that motivates men like his father, power and profit. It was boring. In the end, Caleb had still been sold. But there was something else. A leash for the dog, Ethan had called it. He took the signed contract and held it to the flame of a scented candle by the bathtub, watching it turn to ash. Caleb was surprised. Ethan explained that it wasn't needed anymore. It had been a desperate measure, conceived only when he heard Caleb was meeting Logan. The tattoo on Ethan's chest rippled under the water. Seeing Caleb staring, he took his finger and traced the letters with it. Caleb pulled his hand away in disgust, telling Ethan that his sudden turn towards sentimentality was unnerving. Ethan protested that he'd always been this way. When Caleb's father had forbidden them from seeing each other, his world had collapsed. His family told him it was a lost cause, that pursuing it would only bring trouble for Caleb, who was known for his filial piety. The frustration had been eating him alive, so he'd gotten the tattoo. Caleb rolled his eyes. Such a romantic cliché. He asked when Ethan had fallen for him. 3 years ago, in archery class, Ethan said without hesitation, "The moment your arrow split mine right in the bullseye." Caleb deadpanned, "So I shot you right in the heart?" He mocked the cheesy sentiment. Ethan grumbled that Caleb didn't understand romance, didn't understand how cool he had looked in that moment, drawing the bow with a perfectly blank expression. Caleb didn't understand. All he knew was that the bathwater was starting to feel sticky. He was about to get up and rinse off when Ethan pulled him back down. "We're not done." Caleb was confused. The post-coital chat session was over. Ethan clarified that he had only stopped because he thought Caleb wanted to talk. Now, he said, his voice dropping low, "I'm starting."